Welcome to my throne of history. Actually, it's a chair in my living room with a black sheet thrown over it. But in history, you need to learn to use your imagination. So you better start using yours. From this throne, imagination, come on. From this throne, I'm going to take you on a journey of 10,000 years in 23 weeks. Crash helmet and full harness 5-point seatbelt probably required. We're going to go from 8000 BC until yesterday. Back in the time of COVID, there's a bit more history for you. Back in the time of COVID, I made a video for each of those 23 periods for children who were out of school because of lockdown. We're going to start by looking at the video I made for this period, and then you come back here to my throne. You've got it, haven't you? Yep. Come back here to my throne and I'll give you some more information and some ideas of how you could have a go at living in that period. Let's go to the period we've called the Mesolithic age and watch that video I made and see what we need to remember about those times.
Try to remember.
Exactly. So, hello. So, what do we want them to remember? Well, the first thing we'd like you to remember in this little podcast introduction to the Mesolithic age is the length of time that this period covers. 3,500 years. That's 30 times longer than from when Queen Victoria died at the beginning of the last century. So it's a very, very long time. No. Did lots of things change? No, they didn't. Hardly anything changed. And the other thing I want you to remember and to realise is that in the whole of that time, the only way that people could move around was by walking. No. Well, yes, you could fly, but people couldn't fly. They can't fly. So, yeah, it was walking. There were no horses, certainly no cars, chariots, bicycles, or anything like that. So people had to walk. And the people who lived in this period, we've called them hunter-gatherers, because that's a bit like birds of prey. Well, like you, yes, a little bit. But basically, that's how they got their food. They either hunted it, wild animals, fish, or they gathered it, berries or nuts. Now, the problem with that is that if you're in one place for a long time, say, a long time, I mean 2 or 3 months perhaps, you will perhaps have frightened the animals away, you may well have exhausted the supply of fish, and you will almost certainly have used up all the berries. So these people then had to move on. They had to move on to a new place where the berries and maybe the animals were still available for food. And it was in fact a very sustainable way to live, very environmentally friendly, something, as you probably know, we haven't quite got the hang of at the moment. Because once they moved on, that allowed the berries, the fish, the animals to replenish their stock. And if people came back in 20, 30 years' time to that particular area, there was more food for them. So if you were going to have to move on like that, you had to have a home that was almost portable. You could almost carry it around with you. And that is what these people had. They would just build what I suppose you would call it a very simple hut, using branches and twigs, covering it with animal skins from the animals they'd caught and eaten the meat off, and they could easily pick this up and move it to the next location, remembering again that they had to walk, so it probably wouldn't be that far away. How far can you walk in a day? Well, I suppose if you've got a family and there's children and everybody, maybe 8 or 9 miles. So if they moved for 3 or 4 days, they'd what? They'd be 40 miles nearly away from where they were. In fact, the story in our Mesolithic age section tells you about a young boy who went on a very long walk with his father. Yes, his name was Aled, and he went on a very long walk with his father to go and see something. And that something was quite important, and we'll tell you about that in just a minute. And 3 or 4 years ago, with my family and some friends, we were in a wooded area where there'd been quite a heavy storm and the wind had been blowing and lots of branches had fallen off the trees. And we decided that we'd have a go at building a Mesolithic hut. And I'm going to show you a speeded up version of that video while we keep talking to you. So these huts were very easy to move, very easy to build. We didn't have any animal skins, so we just covered it with branches and fern and bits of twigs. But that's how they did it. Now the other thing is that when you gather your food, not so much when you hunt your food, but when you gather your food, it doesn't have a sell-by date on it. Neither does it say, this berry is not poisonous. Yeah? So it was a little bit hit and miss until they got used to what berries they could eat and what berries they shouldn't eat. So the food part of their life was a little bit worrying, shall we say. And most of their days were spent in just doing things that allowed them to survive. The men would go off hunting to animals. You never knew if they were going to come back, because if they didn't kill the animal, there was a very strong chance that the animal would kill them. Quite right. Yeah, thank you. Speaking from the animal point of view, yes? Okay. But also, the women had to do things. They had to make sure that the animal skins were available, because these were also used as clothing. So it was their job to sew these together. They didn't have needles, they didn't have threads. They would use a needle perhaps made from a bone. And they would use thread, flax, a plant that they could use, and they could also use the flax as a sort of mattresses in their house. It was a very, very hard existence. You can read about it all in the various sections on our Mesolithic pages. And there's a few interesting things there. There's a little video that I put on because I was talking about trees and how trees can grow. And that was one of the things that happened. Once the ice had melted, trees began to grow. And over a period of time, 3,500 years, don't forget we've got, it was a long time for trees to grow. And trees can grow for various reasons. People like you, Mr. Al, yes you, a little bird can pick up a seed, carry it a long way, hundreds of miles, and then drop that seed and trees can grow. And there's a little video on about something I came across when I was travelling to do with palm trees and how the palm trees can plant themselves almost. So that's something. But the other thing I said I was going to tell you about was why Aled and his dad went for a long walk. And the answer was, at the very start of our time period, England was joined to Europe. That's right, and the land was called Doggerland. But halfway through this period, we believe that there was a massive tsunami and sea levels rose up and flooded Doggerland. It disappeared completely, along with quite a lot of people who were living on it at the time, because it was very good land to live on. So, when it disappeared, England became an island. And you can read all about that on our Mesolithic pages. Hope you enjoy them. You did? A lot. Good.
So that's told you a little bit about the Mesolithic age. And I suppose I should really tell you why it's called the Mesolithic age. It's because it's from a Greek word, lithic, which in Greek means stone or made of stone or connected to stone. and meso, Greek again, which means middle. So this period is really the middle Stone Age. There was an older Stone Age called the Paleolithic Age, lithic, stone again, paleo meaning older. And next time we come on, we're going to be looking at the Neolithic Age. And you've probably guessed that neo means new. We've actually called next times the Stone Age, just simplified it. Now, what else can I tell you? Well, first of all, the people who lived in this time were very environmentally friendly. I think, as you saw from that little video, they were always moving on. And as they moved on, they let nature grow back. So they might well spend, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years in one place, chop down a few trees so as they had the necessary twigs to make their huts and the necessary wood to have a fire. And then they'd move on and the trees could grow back. Now, in the modern world, as you probably know, there is a lot of what's called deforestation, and that's where masses of forests are, I was going to say felled, but the trees are actually felled, but the forests are laid to waste. And we do it all very, very quickly using machines. Now, because the Mesolithic people, the hunter-gatherers, didn't have those machines, it would take them a very long time, probably using a flint axe, to knock down a tree. So in that way, everything taking much longer, while they were knocking them down, the trees could be growing elsewhere. They didn't really have knives. What they had was, they would use flint, which can be sharpened, in fact on a stone, to a very, very, very good sharpness. So it was like a very, very good knife. And that's what they would have used. So let's have a think. What could you do to have a go at living in those times? Well, let's just deal with the knife and the flint. You could do something called whittling. Now, whittling is where you take a piece of wood, a branch, and actually make the end sharper so that it will dig in the ground, or you could use it as a spear if you're catching your lunch. And whittling, you can probably find courses somewhere around where you live. Somebody will be doing a course where you can learn how to whittle, or if you've got some adult supervision, then you could have a go at home. And this is what I got Molly to do. Molly, qualified forest school leader, I got her to just show you what whittling was all about. And it takes me back, because in my day, history, as you know, sometimes if we hadn't got a pencil sharpener, we would actually use a knife to sharpen the pencil. We'd take the bit of wood away from the edges, and the lead, which was inside the piece of wood, would then come through and we'd sharpen the pencil, just like using a pencil sharpener, but doing it yourself. So what else could you do? Well, you could try, I'm going to suggest this, you could try for a day, maybe 2, living in the same way as these people did, with only the light from nature. They had no light bulbs, they couldn't switch on the light. They could have a fire, and the fire would keep them warm and give some light. And it would also be used sometimes to frighten away the animals who might be looking for you for a quick lunch. So there was that, but basically you lived by nature. So in the winter, you perhaps had 6-7 hours of daylight, otherwise it was dark. In the summer, you might have 17-18 hours of daylight, so you could get more jobs done. Try it. Don't go up and down stairs in the dark, I'm not suggesting that. But just regulate your life according to what nature is allowing you. So what could these people do for entertainment? They had no television, get rid of all your electronic technology. You have none of that at all. You're sitting there in the dark of your hut. You don't want to go to bed just yet because you've only been awake for 6 or 7 hours. What are you going to do? Well, you could try telling stories. That's certainly one way. But you could also perhaps make some music. Now, how would you make music? Maybe you've got your wood, don't forget. Maybe you could make hollow wooden pipes of different lengths and hit them with a bone, say, left over from dinner. And if you notice that depending on the length of the pipe, it makes a different sound. It's the way something like an organ works even today. A pipe organ. You could try, as we showed you in the video, going out into a forest and finding some twigs and some leaves and making your own little Mesolithic hut. Now, don't go breaking branches off trees, but if they're lying on the ground, probably not the best time of year to do it now, but even in your garden, you could go out with some canes, make them into a wigwam shape, and then maybe cheat a bit and put a sheet over it. An old sheet. I do not want letters from parents saying I went to go to bed last night and there was no sheet on my bed. It was out in the garden over 5 canes. So find an old sheet or some piece of material and drape it over. Then you've made your own equivalent Mesolithic hut. So there's the music, there's the entertainment, there's the making the hut, there's lots and lots of things you can do, and there's also the trying to live like them. Take everything modern out of your life, just for one day. See what it's like. There is a good point to it because, of course, you won't be able to see me. So don't do it for too long because I'll be back in a fortnight's time with another period of history. And this one won't be the Mesolithic age, won't be about hunter-gatherers, which sometimes puzzles some people.
So I used to think that historians were clever people,
Yeah, I reckon they think that too.
but they don't always talk about the whole story, do they? And that's bad.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, what was it that you called the people of this time?
They were hunter-gatherers.
Right. But you can't just survive by hunting and gathering.
What do you mean?
Well, they need to hunt, gather and eat too.
Ah, yes. So they're not just hunter-gatherers.
No, they're hunter, gatherers and eaters.
I'll rewrite history for you.
Yeah, please do.
I will.